Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the BEADS Provider and Case Manager bi-monthly webinar. We are happy you were able to join us today. As a reminder, if you open your chat, you will see how to sign in for today's meeting. So please do that. Additionally, our Chief Program Officer, Heather Dane, has also put some other useful information in the chat. For using live captions, you can turn on your live captions and subtitles by selecting Captions Subtitles On in your video controls. To change the caption language, select Settings and then Captions and Subtitles and choose the language you want. If you have a question, select Q&A on the right side of your screen. Type your question in the Compose box and then select Send. Your question will only be visible to the host or the presenters, and we will answer questions as time permits. But feel free to enter questions at any point. Again, how to sign in, find the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. Under the featured list, find the link for the sign-in sheet. Click the link, complete the form, and submit it. And then the certificate of attendance you will receive will have the title and date of today's meeting with an electronic signature. We are not able to accommodate special requests for certificates of attendance. Okay, so our agenda for today, we have a guest with us today, a face that's probably very familiar. Kathy Robinson, our DDRS Deputy Director, is with us today, and she's going to talk a little bit about our path forward. We will talk about the Provider Experience Survey, the Case Management Survey, some service delivery topics. We'll talk a little bit about short-term and long-term budget requests, some meeting guidance, and then some reminders about various topics. And then invite once again you as our audience to let us know some future webinar topics that you would like us to include in the future. So I will hand it over to Kathy Robinson.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Holly, for hosting this webinar and for having me on as a guest. For those of you who don't know me very well, I'm Kathy Robinson. I am the Associate Director for the Division of Disability and Rehabilitative Services, and I am currently working on a FSSA project that is influencing and driving some of the activities related to waiver redesign work that the Bureau of Disability Services is engaged in. So today, my presentation is to really kind of update folks on that piece of work a little bit and walk everybody through what's been happening with waiver redesign and the waiver transition work that is underway. Depending on the circles that you may be in, meetings and events that you may be attending, you may have already heard some of this information. However, we want to make sure that we're getting information out to anybody and everyone, and really extending our network and sharing information about this work so that folks know what to expect, particularly in the coming 12 months, and just to make you aware of what we have planned moving forward and some anticipated communication from us regarding some of these changes. So before I get into the waiver transition work, I do want to just level set a little bit and revisit some things in terms of where we started in this work and kind of why we are doing what we're doing in 2023 today. So to kind of catch everyone up to speed, if you'll recall, gosh, way back in 2019, which seems like maybe a really long time ago for some of you, and for me, it seems like it was yesterday, we were engaged in and kicked off waiver redesign efforts. And to clarify for folks in this session today, and for those of you watching the recording later, waiver redesign is still happening, and it just may not seem as abrupt or as sort of a point in time experience, but it is a thing that the Bureau and the division are still actively engaged in, and we'll talk a little bit about how everything kind of fits together here. But we paused our waiver redesign work in 2020 really because of the pandemic. Just prior to that occurring, we did release an initial concept paper. You may recall seeing that information. I think it's actually still on the BEADS website. If you haven't seen that information, that's where you can find it. But that initial concept paper was really framing out for folks some of the things that we were looking at and working on, and feedback. It was a summary of feedback from stakeholders about what they wanted to see occur in the waiver redesign efforts. So after we unpaused our work, after things with the pandemic settled somewhat and we had an opportunity to regroup, we released the path forward document that you see here. This is the what the document looks like. And again, it's also out on the BEADS website if you haven't seen it. The path forward was an opportunity for us to reach back out to stakeholders and say, okay, we've somewhat navigated the worst portions and the worst terrain of COVID, and we are ready to re-engage in the waiver redesign discussion. And the path forward document really just was a way to connect with the broader community, what our plan was for waiver redesign in that progressive practice improvement approach, which really is us taking smaller iterative steps towards redesign as opposed to a massive overhaul that had sort of this big reveal or big implementation approach. So some of the things that we highlighted in there as part of some of those iterative steps or baby steps towards redesign were some of the things that are highlighted here, the system consolidation projects. So some of you may recognize that if you are accessing the BEADS portal now and recognizing that we're not using Insight or continuing to need to use Insight to do our day-to-day work, but also provided a platform and a place for enhanced team coordination, which was also addressing some key areas of stakeholder feedback. We also identified some new waiver services, particularly self-direction, that folks were particularly interested in, and seeing steps towards implementing that sooner than later. You'll also probably recognize out of some of the stakeholder feedback and our synthesis of that information really resulted in today's pilot projects that you're probably hearing about in terms of getting those off the ground and implemented so that we could really explore different service array options for our home and community-based waivers. We also restructured our case management, and that's seemingly going pretty well in our efforts to really kind of reset that relationship and build that partnership. So the path forward document is, as I said, it's out on the website, but it is also the ongoing place where we're going to be providing regular updates about our home and community-based waivers and steps that we're taking towards that continued redesign work. So I'm only mentioning that because we are scheduled to provide another update to this in 2023. So we're intending to do that later this year. So be on the lookout for an updated path forward document with some new information about a continued movement forward in the waiver redesign space. So I want to shift to what's happening in alignment with the waiver redesign, which is the waiver transition. The waiver transition is, for all intents and purposes, a part of waiver redesign. So you'll hear us talk about waiver transition a lot, if you haven't already, over the course of the next, particularly the next 12 months. This slide really just highlights how our waiver system between Division of Aging and DDRS is structured today. So for those of you who aren't familiar with some of the waiver options in our state, this kind of highlights what waivers are currently functioning in the purview of the division, the DDRS space, which is the Community Integration and Habilitation Waiver and the Family Supports Waiver. And these numbers are all, the numbers of folks or enrollees are approximate, just for contextualizing kind of what we're talking about and the size and scope of things. So the blue boxes really represent the DDRS home and community-based waivers, and the green boxes are reflective of Division of Aging. And there's a couple of things I'll point out on the slide, which is the aged and disabled waiver has 2 boxes, and that's going to be explained in the next slide here in just a minute. But really, the Division of Aging operates the aged and disabled waiver and the traumatic brain injury waiver today. You'll see that those the A&D waiver is broken down by age group, and that's because this waiver is about to split up in the course of the next 12 months. And just want to highlight here also, Division of Aging also operates other programs and services to their recipients, and so they will continue to exist as a division moving forward after this waiver transition. They will just be no longer providing or overseeing the home and community-based waivers that we're talking about in these slides. So they'll continue to be a resource for folks, and will continue to be supporting older adults and aging Hoosiers moving forward as well, in other ways and different capacities. So this slide, again, is a reflection of what we are implementing in terms of changes. The blue boxes, again, are really those waivers that will be in July of 2024 under the oversight of the Division of Disability and Rehabilitative Services, and most specifically, the Bureau of Disability Services. And so the Family Supports Waiver, the CIH waiver, will continue to be where they are today. The Traumatic Brain Injury waiver in its entirety will move to DDRS, and the portion of the aged and disabled waiver that is a population of folks who are 59 and under will remain on the aged and disabled waiver, and that waiver will be renamed to the Health and Wellness waiver. And that will also, in doing that, that population will shift and be managed by the Division of Disability and Rehabilitative Services as well. You'll see here a black box, which is the new waiver, which is being referred to as Pathways to Aging. And this is the Indiana Medicaid's new MLTSS Managed Long-Term Services and Supports waiver for those who are 60 and older, who meet that nursing facility level of care. And so those individuals will be supported in a new waiver structure and be managed, that waiver will be managed by Indiana Medicaid directly. And then again, the Division of Aging will still be there. They'll continue to operate those other programs such as the Choice Program, the ADRC support, APS, some of those other pieces will still be in Division of Aging, and Division of Aging folks will still be there, and they'll still be offering their expertise and support in coordination with us as we move through this transition. So really just want to emphasize the population of folks that are being affected here are those folks who are currently on the aged and disabled waiver, who are 60 and older, who meet that nursing facility level of care, will be transitioning to a new waiver administered by Medicaid called Pathways to Aging. The 59 and under population on the A&D waiver who meet the nursing facility level of care are going to move to DDRS and the Bureau of Disability Services. And so with that, I want to just talk about the timeline and where we are today with the work that is happening in this transition planning. So this is our schedule of things that are happening, and I'll touch really quickly on some of the things that have already occurred so that you know we are progressing through our timeline at a pretty steady clip. We were looking for the aged and disabled waiver to get renewed. That has occurred. That's just a administrative process that states go through every 5 years to reaffirm their continued desire to operate a particular waiver. All of our waivers have to go through that every so often. The A&D waiver just experienced that this past summer, and we got approval for that at the end of June. We also, as many of you hopefully are aware, pursued amendments to all of the Division of Aging and DDRS waivers, the A&D waiver, the TBI, the CIH, and the FSW. We submitted waiver amendments for rate increases for all of those waivers. And so we did complete that. That was submitted to CMS and under their review. So we're hopefully able to implement those. I think we've shared with folks that our strategy would be to apply retroactive effective dates to those rate amendment implementation strategy. So we would be looking to apply the rate increases back to July 1st. So fingers crossed on that process, and hopefully we'll hear something soon and be able to share some information with folks. Want to share here in this next stage of our timeline, there's some operational changes currently happening in order to make the waiver transition occur in July of 2024. I'm showing you on this this indicator here, the red arrow, the arrow pointing down, where we are right now in our schedule, just so you can kind of get a sense of what we are doing, what we still have left to do, and some other elements that are happening kind of in tandem. So we are waiting for some response back from CMS as of today. We actually have already submitted to our federal funding partner, CMS, our draft amendment package to implement the waiver transition. So informally, we are sharing with them a draft, which just gives them an opportunity to review that and share with us any concerns. We will actually formally submit our waiver package to CMS in January of 2024. So between now and then, we will be getting initial feedback from CMS on our waiver drafts. And then we will also be publishing all of the waiver drafts, all of the proposed changes, all of the waiver transition information, and posting that for public comment in this fall. So one thing for this group to keep in mind is that we will be submitting all of this to CMS, but before doing so, we will be sharing it for public comment so that folks can see everything really collectively in one space, and also be able to provide some public comment related to the changes that we are pushing to make. And also we'll have some opportunity for you to engage in some conversation with us around that public comment opportunity to really know how to provide public comment, where to do that, and how much time you have to give us feedback. Also just want to highlight here the blue boxes that you will see that talk about the employment transformation and the IPP implementation. These are things that are happening alongside of this waiver transition work, and really pretty much in conjunction with the efforts that we're engaged in to transition the TBI and the 59 and under population to DDRS. One is the phase 1 of the employment transformation. Hopefully you've heard about the work that DDRS is doing with our employment transformation, and that really is to emphasize and work strategically toward helping individuals with disabilities work toward competitive integrated employment outcomes. And so there's a lot of work going into that, a lot of additional activities and projects associated with that that hopefully you are all aware of, but important to note that a lot of the activities are timed with waiver amendment schedules. And so you'll see phase 1 is currently in that same track for July of 2024, which is where we introduce employment-focused language in our waiver amendments, and some of any new employment array options that we can introduce at that time as well. We also have the innovation pilot projects implementation, and those are pilot projects that were able to be funded through the American Rescue Plan dollars that the state of Indiana received, and are really kind of off and running with those pilot projects and getting us some data and information about some promising practices and proof of concept for potential waiver services and waiver supports in the future. And then I want to just mention in this green box towards the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see another waiver amendment. And this is a part of this, again, this progressive practice improvement approach of the waiver redesign, where we stage out some of these waiver amendments in order to make some iterative changes to how we deliver services and supports. That next amendment will occur shortly after we get approval for this waiver amendment cycle that we're currently engaged in, and that is really to build out the self-direction service option that I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the path forward, and some of the areas of feedback from stakeholders that we prioritize. Self-direction was one of those services, so we'll be really moving in 2024 to put forth an amendment to be effective in 2025 for self-direction. So we're really kind of presenting some of this timeline information so that stakeholders can understand what's happening and when and why we might be staging things the way that we are. I will just mention the other piece of this, in case you are wondering, the level of care assessment representative. That's an element of pathways for level care determination and the process around that. That is when the state will be implementing that piece for pathways for the health and wellness waiver and the TBI waiver. That will not include the CIH or the FSW in that implementation. So that's our kind of current strategy for implementing some of the next stages of the path forward in our waiver redesign work. I also just want to note, we've gotten some questions from folks about, with the waiver redesign, you guys were looking at doing 3 waivers. That was what was in the initial concept paper. What happened with that? And I think that is still on our sort of target of waiver redesign and waiver work. We're still looking at how we might be able to do that. And I think after this waiver transition period in 2024, when we have all of these different waivers and populations in our division's area of oversight and administration, we'll be able to then take some next steps to get in place a new redesign or waiver structure and have some stakeholder conversations about what that should look like at that time. So just know that we don't have a total map of what that might be, but that is still something that the division and BDS is working toward actively as part of some of the iterative steps that I've just kind of walked through. So I know that's a lot of information in a little bit of time, so I will stop talking for a second and check in with Heather and Holly and see if there are any critical questions for me to address.
Kathy, there's just one question that I think would be good to answer, and it's, is DDRS planning to add any services to the H&W waiver that currently exist on the other waivers, such as recreational therapy or music therapy?
So the first step in this initial waiver transition stage is to get the waivers moved. So we don't have any new services that we're shifting or adding to the A&D waiver as it is today. And again, that will be that 59 and under population. So an important consideration for everybody is the transition dynamic that is being introduced with the implementation of pathways and the H&W waiver. So that's splitting that aged and disabled waiver into 2 populations, 2 different waivers. However, folks on the H&W waiver, once they reach the age of 60, will transition to pathways for aging. And so one of the things that we're trying to be particularly conscious of is the transition process for those folks. We actually don't want to create a situation where they have a complete a distinct different experience moving from the health and wellness waiver into pathways. So we are, at least in the initial move, trying to keep that service array as stable as possible. Once we get post that implemented waiver transition, we will look at the service array across all of those waivers, because one of the areas of stakeholder feedback that we are also targeted to address in some form or fashion is the dynamic that folks have different service arrays on different waivers. They want to access maybe a rec therapy service, but they're on the A&D waiver and that's not currently there. And so if they want to access that, they can't really get it. And that's still an area of concern, of stakeholder feedback that we are working to address. So I just want to highlight the fact that concern has not fallen off of our radars. It is, however, a part of a broader kind of strategic plan of how we work to address all of the support needs for these different folks and different levels of care after we get through this initial step of transition in July of 2024.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all the questions we have.
Awesome,
Right.
Thanks. And I'm happy to come back at another point in time, provide additional updates for you all, and just let us know if you guys have additional questions or information that would be helpful, and we'll be sure to include that in an upcoming webinar.
Thank you, Kathy. So we'll transition now to talk a little bit about the provider user experience survey that we recently sent out. So you may recall as providers and case managers that we went live with a major enhancement to the BEADS portal in November of 2022. The enhancement was really in response to feedback from lots of different parties, individuals, families, providers, case managers, who specifically requested improved access to information and navigation within the system, the IT system that's used. What we heard was there were technology limitations that prevented or at least didn't promote good communication among team members. So we, BEADS, had a pretty old system that we had been using, and in November 2022, that functionality from that older system was built into the portal. That is part of a system consolidation project that's really a multi-year project. But since November, we wanted to give some time for users of the system to be able to get in and perform things, perform activities in the BEADS portal, and then survey those users and see how it's working for them. So we issued a provider user experience survey, and that survey went out in, I believe it was June, and asked providers, yes, June 9th through the June 23rd. We got 287 surveys back, which is pretty good, pretty good. And what you see here are the respondents of by type of waiver service provided, and then the years that provider has been a BEADS provider. So we did this again, to kind of see what providers' experiences are using the system. There is a lot of training materials available in the portal on the resource page for all different users to access to help with that. In addition to some training that was done and user guides provided and all sorts of training materials. So before I move to the next slide, I want to send out a huge thank you to each provider entity and staff person that completed that survey. We do use the results of surveys like this to guide our next steps. And we can't, it certainly helps us know where to focus our attention when we hear from users of the system what their pain points are and what they like and what's working and maybe what needs to be looked at for potential enhancements. Next slide, please. So when we thought about the respondents, again, we also asked what was that respondent's role. So the person that did the survey for us and submitted it to us. This is just a breakdown of their role within their agency, which just gives us an idea of how they touch the system, right? What we learned is that the first thing, excuse me, what we learned was that the providers are accessing the portal. 48% of the respondents were accessing it daily. You can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Sorry about that. So 48% of the respondents to the survey access the portal daily, which is really good. That means that, you know, they're frequently getting in there and getting information, you know, that they need. 34% of the respondents were accessing it weekly, which is still pretty frequent. So then we just had 17 respondents reporting that they access the portal annually or not at all. And that may be more relative to their role within their agency. But I think overall what we learned was that providers are using the system. They are fine, you know, they have reasons to get in there and look at the information. Next slide, please. So we also ask as a provider, what are those things that you are accessing? I mentioned the resource page. So that is a page within the portal that has literally resources, training materials, user guides, all sorts of good resources for users. And what you can see here is that the majority of the people that responded are actually accessing that page. The majority of the people are accessing release notes, which correspond when we make updates to the portal. The vast majority are viewing the PCISP, which is what we anticipated, and that's what we want. That is what we have heard from our partners, that, you know, that's what they really need. And I think it's a very good thing that providers are accessing the portal to see that, the PCISPs, because those, as we all know, are the roadmap to the person's, what they've defined as their good life. So we're very encouraged by that particular data point. We also see that some users are looking at the monitoring checklist, and some are interacting with the short-term and long-term budget request within the portal. Next slide. So we also asked, excuse me, respondents to tell us on a scale of 1 to 5 stars what they viewed as the excuse me, the usefulness of the resource page, the helpfulness of release notes, the helpfulness of viewability of the PCISP, in the interaction with the STBR and LTBRs, and then the helpfulness of viewability of the monitoring checklist. So again, you'll see that most positive was the helpfulness of viewability of the PCISP, and then the monitoring checklist. But certainly all 5 of those were rated above the 3.75. So again, you know, that's pretty good. And again, 82% of the users reported accessing the portal either weekly or daily. So there's very frequent access to the portal by our providers, and we're glad to see that. So when we asked respondents what they did with the STBRs and LTBRs in the portal, what you see here is the response we got back. Again, you know, part of the reason we made some pretty significant changes and modifications around the STBRs and LTBRs, which previously were called Beamers and BRQs, you know, is because what we heard from providers and other partners was that they really wanted increased visibility in that process. Providers in particular wanted to be able to see those requests as they kind of move through the review process. And also wanted to be able to, have direct access to that. So what you see here is that 50% or 50 of the respondents indicated they would actually initiate STBRs and LTBRs, and that was a major change in the portal, and that providers can actually go in and initiate those. Providers do not have to do that, but that is an option available to them. 55 of the respondents said they used the portal to track submission of requested STBRs or LTBRs. 55 said that they track approval or denial of STBRs and LTBRs through the portal. And then 64 respondents said they follow up with case managers outside of the portal on submitted STBRs and LTBRs. And that may be via email, phone call, any other means, but it's communication outside the portal. So again, we're seeing that there is use of the portal for the STBRs and LTBRs for providers to submit them, but also for providers to track kind of those STBRs and LTBRs through that process. And there's still contact with case managers outside of the portal, which is fine. Next slide. The other big change with the portal was that we provided a means in the portal for providers to actually go in and update their company or agency profile. This was something, again, that we had talked about for quite some time, where it was noted that could be helpful to providers to be able to go in and update those things and not have to send an email, and that it might streamline that process. So we asked providers if they had requested a provider profile change in the BEADS portal. And what you see here is that most had not yet. And then we also asked if the system admin users with the providers had requested to add records to a provider profile within the portal. And as of June, we had not had a lot of that yet. And that's, again, that's okay. But we do have that functionality. And we think that some of that is, really just getting acclimated to the system. And we would expect to see that change, those numbers change in the future. Next slide. We also asked if system users had ever requested to deactivate a provider profile record. You can see the responses here, and if providers, respondents had updated provider agency contact information in the BEADS portal, and that's where you see a change in the numbers, right? So 36 had actually updated agency contact information in the portal, which is, which is a good sign. That means that providers are able to go in there, change that contact information as needed. And I do want to stress, providers can go in at any time and update provider contact information. So if there is a change in, staff in the positions that receive referrals and that sort of thing, providers are actually able to go in and make that change. And we do see that feature is being used. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the provider choice list and provider referrals. So individuals, families, case managers, and even providers very early on identified for us the need to make changes in what we used to call the pick list. And that was very early on in Waiver redesign. So we made changes to the choice list with the intent of improving the accuracy of the information contained in that choice list, while also giving providers an opportunity to add additional information on their agency. We also saw an opportunity to build in the functionality of making referrals to providers in the portal, including this in the BEADS portal actually allows for the ease of sending and tracking referrals, as well as providers being able to respond to those referrals. So as this functionality was designed, particularly the provider referrals, we were also contemplating, in the future, stay using that provider referral process for our supervised group living services as well. So what you can see here is that with the provider choice list, 33 of the providers that responded had updated provider agency information in the choice list within the portal since November. 84 had not. And 150 respondents had interacted with provider referrals in the portal, and 111 had not. So the accuracy of the choice list and the ability to track the journey of referrals to providers are both very important from a broad perspective, because they both potentially impact a person's access to services and supports. So one of the expectations for providers is that they would review their profile information at least every 90 days to ensure accuracy. By doing that, it ensures individuals and families know who and how to connect with to get, with any given provider. The other expectation around referrals is that providers would respond to those referrals in a timely fashion. So both the attestations that we will also talk a little bit more about later, the attestations are those literally attestations by a provider every 90 days that their information is current, or that they need to make updates and do those and make those updates. Both the attestation and the provider referrals are metrics that BEADS reports to CMS. The goal for percentage of providers completing attestations every 90 days was set at 95%. So we realize that is a stretch goal for all of us, and we're pretty far from meeting that right now. But as we assessed where we are with the completions of the attestations, we realized that there was more that we can do to support providers in completing those. So we are actually sending reminders to providers that they need to complete those attestations every 90 days. So hopefully that will be helpful. Again, the goal of those of getting those attestations completed is to trigger providers to confirm their agency information and update their agency information so that those choice lists are accurate, and that individuals, and that would in turn improve access for individuals seeking services and supports. We've seen some significant progress since November in the provider actions related to referrals. Our goal there was 90%, and we recently hit 60%. So again, 90% is a stretch goal, but we believe that's obtainable because we have seen that number, that metric on provider referrals really climb recently as we've all gotten used to using this feature in the portal. So thank you, a huge thank you to our partners in the provider world for your attention to these items and your time and effort in learning the portal and the functionality within it. So next slide. So the provider user experience survey, we did get some other suggestions that you see here. Again, we take these to heart. That's the reason we do the survey, is to hear what's working well and where we need to improve or enhance efficiency. And we got some really great feedback. So again, thank you, a huge thank you to everyone that completed those surveys. We got some great comments. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go through them all, but we got some, aside from just answering the questions, we got some additional comments that are really, really helpful as we continue to work towards improvements in the IT system to support the work that we're all doing. Next slide. So we also completed or sent out a case management survey. We sent out almost 32,000. It was 31,702 surveys were sent out. We got a great response rate, actually, of 27.5%. So that's actually pretty good. As Kathy had mentioned, we embarked on a case management innovation project in 21 and moved to selective contracting with case management organizations in 2022. And, you know, that was really a result of our waiver redesign efforts, where we heard from individuals, families, and system partners that they needed case managers that could be navigators, that could be advocates, and that could be a partner in the process with them. So when we developed the survey, those were the three themes: case managers as navigator, advocate, and partner. We will be issuing or publishing the results of that survey this week, but just want to mention a few things. So we essentially asked 4 questions about case managers or individuals case managers as a navigator. Those questions were explain as a navigator, how well does your case manager explain how waiver services can support you? How well does your case manager provide you with information on the variety of waiver services available to you? You know, the results were very positive. In the 86% above average in most areas, both as navigator and advocate, and as partner as well. So again, I'm not, just because of time constraints, I'm not going to go through them all. Those will be published, but certainly we saw in the 80% of respondents said case managers were above average in the areas we asked. When we asked specifically about case managers as partners who listen without judgment so that people can freely express themselves and share their opinions, that one, respondents rated their case managers 92% were above average, which is really great. So shout out to those families and individuals that completed that survey. We will do that annually, and we'll provide the results of those surveys annually as well. So shout out to case managers on that as well. Okay, friendly reminder. I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. As a reminder, all waiver service deliveries should follow the service definitions, allowable activities and limitations. That's super important because service delivery is subject to audit at any time. And we wanted to talk a little bit about some services in particular. If we can get next slide, thank you. So respite and PAC and residential have-in support. Want to kind of go through those definitions real quickly. Respite means services provided to individuals unable to care for themselves that are furnished on a short-term basis because of the absence or need for relief of those persons who normally provide care for the individual. PAC is a service provided to allow individuals to remain and live successfully in their own homes, function and participate in their communities, and avoid institutionalization. PAC can support and enable the individual in activities of daily living, self-care, mobility, with hands-on assistance, prompting, reminders, support, and monitoring needed to ensure the health and safety of the individual. And then we have the residential habilitation. Specifically, we're talking a little bit about the hourly here, but it would apply also to the other RHS 2.0. That means individually tailored supports that are specified in the PCISP that assist with the acquisition, retention, or improvement of skills related to living in the community. These supports include adaptive skill development, assistance with activities of daily living, community inclusion, transportation, adult educational supports, and social and leisure skill development that support an individual to live successfully in their own home. So while the allowable activities in this example are very similar, the intent and purpose of the services are different, particularly when we start thinking about respite as short term. So just want to provide an opportunity to clarify that there are, again, while there are very similar allowable activities, there is a substantive difference between respite and PAC and respite and residential HAB. Next slide. Short-term and long-term budget requests. Providers and case managers wanting to check the status of a pending ST or LTBR can check the status in the BEADS portal. We do ask that you not submit a JIRA ticket to check the status. And we ask that providers not submit a claim until the STBR has been approved and an NOA has been issued. To look at the status of an STBR or LTBR, for the STBR, from the PCISP tab, go to the short-term budget request to review the status. With the LTBR, you'll need to go to the waiver management tab, go to long-term budget requests, and review the status there. Another hopefully useful reminder is just that if for providers and case managers to be responsive to contacts from the DFR regarding Medicaid redeterminations, and to encourage families and individuals that you are working with to be responsive to those. With the end of the PHE coming, it's very, very important that individuals and families respond to DFR communications regarding their Medicaid and necessary information to continue that Medicaid. We don't want anyone to experience an interruption or disruption in their services and supports or in their Medicaid. So, as you support people, as you interact with individuals and families, please encourage them to watch for notices and mailings from the DFR about their Medicaid. We talked a little bit about provider attestations when we were going through the provider user experience survey. Just again, a reminder, a provider system administrator must log into the BEADS portal and confirm the profile information at least every 90 days. You can go in at any point in time and do that, but the expectation is that at least every 90 days, the system administrator from the provider would go in and, verify or attest that that information is current or update whatever needs to be updated. If you have questions about completing the attestation, you can look at the user guide for providers located in the resource section of the BEADS portal under the user guides tab, and it provides good explanation and instruction on how to complete that. And again, this is a metric that we report to CMS and is very much connected to individuals being able to access services and individuals knowing what providers are supporting people in their area. So this is important. So please make sure that you address that. Next slide. So we will be releasing this week some guidance about case management or meetings, particularly the use of virtual meetings post PHE transition period. Because we've only got a few minutes left, I'm not going to go through this, but again, there will be information released this week about meeting guidance, moving forward. Next slide. Incident reporting, this is another reminder and a did you know. Any law enforcement, including APS or DCS, new APS or DCS involvement requires the filing of an incident report. So if police are called for an individual or a situation involving an individual in services, we would expect to see an incident report about that. Next slide. EVV compliance reminder, electronic visit verification. So you may recall that the IHCP postponed final enforcement date for personal care agencies. However, those personal care service providers that are found to be out of compliance with the EVV requirement have been seeing select claims recouped beginning with services provided in January 2023. So if you, as a provider, are having difficulty or need some support in in EVV compliance, I think the next slide provides some contact information. We have talked about this in each provider webinar. So until we get this one posted, you can look at the last one and find the same information. If you are having trouble with EVV compliance, please take a look at the training available on the website or reach out to the emails listed here. It's important that we get to that place where we're compliant with EVV, and we want to support you in those efforts. So again, if you're having any difficulty or have questions, please utilize these resources. Next slide, please. And again, if you have ideas or your staff have ideas about things you would like to hear about for these webinars, please let us know. You can share your topic with our provider services at BEADS Provider Services at fssa.in.gov. We want this time to be useful for you. So let us know if there is something you want to hear about, and we will build it into the agenda. Next slide. All right. That looks like we're to the end of the slide deck with 1 minute to spare. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you to Heather for walking the slides, doing the slide deck for us, and to Kathy for joining us today. We hope you have a great week and or what's left of your week. And thank you if there's DSPs on this webinar. Thank you for your efforts. And for those of you who supervise DS, please give them BEADS thanks for all their work. They certainly are appreciated. And we will see you in a couple months.